All right, welcome to Ohio State of Mind. This is your host, Josh Keatley. With me is another around the block cohort, acquaintance, someone I literally, we just started talking to each other last week. We didn't even know we worked for the same website. Obviously, I write for Buckeyes Wire of USA Today and Browns Wire of USA Today. But my podcast is with Around the Block. This is Darius Bull Walker. You can follow him on Twitter at BullWalker1. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, follow me on Twitter for some good
Yeah.
sports takes.
And you are the managing editor for Around the Block, the Buckeyes site, correct?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, and that is you were telling me before the podcast started that is currently in the works, right?
Yep. Still got to get some articles off the ground. Looking for writers too. So
looking for writers. That's great. Where can they reach you if they want to write?
Well, reach me on Twitter at BullWalker1 or reach the Twitter page for Around the Block at atb.network.
Just DM you.
Yeah.
That's dope, man. Well, I'm excited to have you on the show. You know, we were bullshitting a little bit. I didn't want to jump on the pod immediately without talking, get to know you a little bit. And the first super interesting tidbit you brought up was how you became an Ohio State fan. So I thought that was a super interesting story.
Crazy.
Yeah, do you care bringing that up on the pod?
Yeah. You know, I'm from Michigan, so I already get a lot of side eyes for being a Buckeye fan. People looking at me crazy, stuff like that. But just my childhood friend. We grew up together, and he's a diehard Michigan fan. I naturally just grew a hate for him because we had played each other on a video game, and he got Michigan. I ended up getting Ohio State, and then we played the game. Years over the years. So I'm just an Ohio State fan. He a Michigan fan. I just how it all came about. Been a diehard fan ever since.
That's amazing. Michigan, born and raised, an Ohio State fan. And you said what? So what? Obviously, it was EA Sports, NCAA football, right?
Yeah, NCAA football.
What years are we talking? Who do you remember any of the players that were? I mean, we're talking Robinson, TP, like who we got going
them
on?
too, but I'm talking about when we were kids. So Santonio Holmes, Troy Smith.
Really? Well, Troy Smith was a killer in that video game, bro.
Yeah, he was. And then Ted Ginn had 99 speed, so just put him on a go route, it's over.
Yeah.
Then Michigan, I can't really, I remember guys like Mario Manningham, Chad Henne. My homie, he just was good with anybody on Michigan. That's one thing I remember. He was the only dude I ever knew that always got Michigan. He was cold.
It's funny too, because when you play those video games, you always kind of want it's all about speed, right? Like you talk about Ted Ginn, and I know a lot of times, if I had a defensive back that was a 99, I'd move him to wide receiver. You know what I mean?
I haven't played both ways.
Yeah. It was all about speed, and even at your quarterback position. So Ohio State was always kind of fun to play with in those video games because they, like you said, they had Troy Smith, they had Terrell Pryor there for a bit. I remember Antonio Henton, was that the name of the backup who got caught with the prostitute?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
He was fun to play with because his speed was 85, and he wasn't too shabby in the game.
Braxton Miller was crazy to play with.
Yeah, I forgot about Braxton.
Man, he was crazy.
Yeah.
One of my favorite players ever on the college football games. He's basically a running back.
He was the last quarterback at Ohio State to be in the game, right?
Yeah, he was.
Yeah. But Michigan, I don't remember them having an extremely fun roster like that. You know what I mean? They always had Chad Henne, John Navarro. I don't remember them having any speed at wide receiver. You mentioned Mario Manningham, but he wasn't a speedster. Jason Avant wasn't really a speedster like Teddy Ginn.
Well, that's when they got Denard. When they had
that's right. They did have Denard Robinson.
He was all they had, though. He was all they had. So
yeah, but he was athletic. He was a good quarterback. He wasn't really even a good quarterback. I don't want to give him too much credit. He was a very average quarterback, but he was athletic as shit. So I do want to
give him athlete.
Oh yeah, phenomenal athlete. But like I told you pre-show, we are going to keep this short for everybody. We just came out the podcast a couple days ago. I was a little late producing last week. If you want to go check out Jay Stevens and I from Locked On Buckeyes, we did a Big Ten fantasy draft. So go check that out. But Bull, you're here with me today. We talked a little bit, but there's not a whole lot going on news-wise, a little bit NIL stuff. But again, I always like to, at the beginning of the show, talk about who are your favorite Buckeyes of all time? Who are some guys that, made you become an Ohio State fan? Obviously, you mentioned Santonio Holmes. That's a great one. I don't think he gets the credit he deserves.
Yeah, Santonio was my guy, man. I love Santonio.
Yeah.
I feel like he was a great, he's really a polished receiver.
Yeah,
Ted Ginn, I think came in during Santonio's sophomore year.
I believe you're right.
Yeah. Then his junior year, they were both, basically stars at that point. But I always felt like Santonio just didn't get the credit he deserved. Not knocking Ted Ginn, because Ginn was great too. I just like Santonio's game more. I feel like he was like a better, pure receiver than Ted Ginn. I think that just what drew me to him.
I think it's hard to debate that. I think that you're probably right. I think in the grand scheme of things, if you ask people, hey, who are your favorite wide receivers of Ohio State history? Most people are going to say Ted Ginn over Santonio Holmes. But I think that's basically because you can't talk about Ted Ginn without remembering the highlights of him as a returner.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Santonio Holmes didn't really do that.
That's true.
Plus, Ted Ginn had the benefit of playing in a more open offense when Troy Smith was the quarterback and they were kind of slinging the ball more. Obviously, not to the extent of what they're doing now under Ryan Day and Urban Meyer, but they were slinging the ball a little bit at the end of Jim Tressell's tenure there. When Santonio Holmes was the wide receiver, Craig Krenzel was still throwing him the ball. And Santonio Holmes, like you said, it was really it. And so, I think Ted Ginn was with them for a year. And remember, Ted Ginn played defensive back in high school, too. So you're talking about a guy who basically ran two routes. Yeah, but Santonio Holmes, if you go back and watch a Santonio Holmes highlight tape, there's plenty of third and 5, third and 6, where he does a little corner route, catches the ball 4 yards down the field, takes it for a first down. Very vital. Another guy that's very similar to that, we talked about it on the podcast a couple weeks ago with Mark Russell, when we actually ranked the top 10 wide receivers in Ohio State history, is Michael Jenkins. Michael Jenkins, another guy. He's not going to blow anybody off the stat sheet, but first-round wide receiver, big dude, lots of critical plays. Everybody remembers.
That's what I was going to say. Michael Jenkins, man, he came up big in big games, and he always had those. He was a clutch player. Like, I remember the play. I think it was against Purdue.
That is correct. Yeah, 4th and 1.
Yeah. Then he had a big play in the championship. I think it was like 4th and 14 against the U, something like that. He converted it. Like
he was good.
Yeah, there's so many great receivers. Sometimes guys like that get lost in the shuffle. Like Santonio Holmes, Michael Jenkins, because we have so many other great receivers and first rounders. But those guys were pivotal to their teams and made big plays and were the go-to guys on their teams.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's the thing, because all those teams revolved around so much like the run, right? Everybody remembers. I mean, even if you look at a guy like Antonio Pittman was a very solid running back. But I mean, if you look at all the running back, I mean, you can name 50 running backs and have a solid argument for them being top 10 running backs in Ohio State history, because they relied on the run for so long. And unfortunately, Michael Jenkins, Santonio Holmes, even Joey Galloway, when you're ranking the top wide receivers of all time, those guys don't necessarily get the credit that they deserve, because they were
so many. You still got guys like Terry Glenn.
Oh yeah,
David Boston. Chris Olave, like we just have so many, greats.
Yeah. Is there any other Ohio State players that you really felt attached to when you were watching them?
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't there long, but man, Malik Hooker, that was my guy.
Yeah,
I love Malik Hooker's game. Like when he came out there, his first game, had 2 interceptions, first start. Not his first game, his first start. 2 interceptions, had the crazy one-hand pick.
Oh yeah.
Had like 7 picks that year for 3 touchdowns. Had like 180 yards, intercept return yards. Like I really thought he was going to be a star, and I feel like he would have been if it wasn't for the injuries. He came out his rookie year, had like 3 picks in the first 5 or 6 games. But I feel like his career has been derailed by injuries. But I really love Malik Hooker's game, man. Like we need a playmaking DB like that right now.
I agree with that. I agree with Malik Hooker. He was a favorite of mine. I actually worked at Ohio State when he played. Malik and I were fairly close. There was a time there when he actually got homesick for a period, and he debated whether or not to transfer back home. He really liked basketball. Got recruited by a couple smaller schools to play basketball. I believe Duquesne, which is in Pennsylvania near his hometown, was a school that offered to have him as a preferred walk-on or whatever it was, and he really strongly considered going back. Good guy, nice guy. And it just all of a sudden something clicked the sophomore year, and he exploded on the scene. His brother, who just transferred to Youngstown State, Marcus Hooker, that's a guy that I wrote pretty extensively about heading into last season at Buckeyes Wire, because I thought he had first-round potential. Still believe he has first-round potential. He's bigger and faster than his brother Malik. So Malik went in the first round, so one would think that was there. But yeah, that's Marcus. It's hard to beat. I mean, it's hard to beat a guy that's better than Malik for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I would agree. Crazy.
Yeah. And I would agree too about what you said about the safeties. Ohio State needs something like that. Ronnie Hickman, very
Seriously.
solid. Yeah.
Yeah, I like
But
Ronnie a lot.
lacking. But it's
I
lacking.
love to have a ball hawk back there, turnover
Yeah.
waiting to happen. That's what Malik was, and he
Oh,
seemed to
yeah.
make them at pivotal moments too.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
I would agree with that. He was like he was scared. The other quarterback had to be scared of him because it was just
yeah,
I mean,
seriously.
anytime he pick it off and even take it back for a pick six. Is there anybody else?
Another Curtis
I love
Samuel. I love
Curtis
Curtis Samuel.
Samuel.
Yeah, that was my guy. It was like Curtis Samuel. That was around the time when I was really paying attention to everybody we were recruiting, like every single
Yeah.
player, like watching every single player highlights. And when I watched Curtis in high school, I'm like, man, this guy is crazy. I can't wait to see him out there. Then when he came, the way we utilized him, he was so, unique, so dynamic. He had like 700 rushing and receiving his junior year. It was really our go-to guy on offense. So that's a guy I really liked a lot. And like one last one, my bad. I think I just want to throw Ryan Shazier in there too. That was my guy too.
Oh, geez, yeah. I mean, I think Shazier's on everybody's list. But before we move on to Shazier, I want the Curtis Samuel thing. I'm with you, dude. That's a guy who doesn't get enough credit because that he is a first round. I know he was drafted in the second round, but you're talking about a guy who had first round athleticism. He was he was a great running back and a great wide receiver. And unfortunately, because there's so many guys that were good at those positions, he'll never get the credit he deserves because he was shuffled around.
And he had to wait his turn.
Yeah,
he didn't
exactly.
really get to get off until his junior year. He could have went to another school and had 3 years of crazy highlights.
Well, that was also a guy that you could really see his body change. There's some guys when they get to college, they're just not built to play college football. And he was a guy that came in. He didn't look like a college football player. And I remember because I worked at Ohio State when he played there too, probably the same time as Malik Hooker, to be honest with you. I can't remember. They all kind of run together. But he packed on like 15, 20 pounds of pure muscle in like one off season. And it was like, whoa, this guy, he might be ready to play. Like he just looked like a different dude. And he just kind of exploded from there. A guy I really thought the Redskins, the Commanders, mess up that name.
The Commanders, yeah.
Yeah. They signed him from the Panthers. I really thought that it was gonna be him and the Terry McLaurin show that was gonna elevate that team, but he struggling with injuries. We'll see what he can do this year. Ryan Shazier is a good one too, man. That's a good one too. I don't think he's underrated though.
No, he's not underrated. He's not. Just one of my favorite guys. Like, man, he was just so cold. Like, did everything. He was all over the field. Could rush the passer, good in coverage. He was a big hitter.
Oh yeah,
man, had like 140 some tackles. I think it's last year in school. It was just crazy athlete.
It's been a long time, and he was kind of like the last badass Ohio State linebacker too.
Yeah, that's something else too. Like we have good, solid guys, some good athletes, rotation guys. But we haven't had just a stud where we just know like every game is going out there getting 10 or 12 tackles.
Yeah, and not just 10 or 12 tackles. Like I think Tough Borland had 10 or 12. He had.
He probably did. Yeah,
but they're 20 yards. They're 15 yards down the field.
Yeah,
Ryan Shazier, all of his tackles were, between 3 yards and -5. Like he was the ball did not get past him. He was moving. He was constantly moving his feet forward. He was constantly making an impact behind the line of scrimmage. He was constantly getting in the quarterback's face. He was constantly, in the tight end's face and coverage. He was a great linebacker.
He was everywhere.
Yeah, he was really great. But I'm with you there, dude. You named a lot of good Buckeyes, man. I'm actually surprised at how great your list was. All those guys are really good. Is there anybody that you think that was like we had Mark Russell on the show a couple weeks ago, and he said Butler by Note, who's a guy who is, a lot of people, they don't even remember who he was really, unfortunately. Yeah. But is there anybody like that you don't think really got enough credit, or didn't even get enough playing time, really?
I mean, I think a guy who I feel like doesn't get enough credit because he didn't really put up numbers. A guy like Evan Spencer. When we had Evan Spencer, he was a great blocker. Like he did all the dirty work. The receivers don't want to do. And I feel like he was a key to that team. And I think he was like a senior on that team too. To see a senior like sacrificing his numbers for the betterment of the team and just doing all the little things, just whatever it takes to win. I feel like that set the tone for the team. And
Yeah.
wide receiver room and everything. And I feel he's pretty underrated because I know he was a great leader for that team too.
That's a good answer because people forget too. He wasn't good, but like you said, he's a very solid receiver. Like in this offense, if he was in this offense, he would probably have all Big Ten level stats. But he was constantly he had that dirty role of blocking. He threw that touchdown pass that it was I think it was in the playoffs or the national championship game. But it was a national championship game.
I think it was.
Yeah. I mean he was a good athlete. I believe he was drafted in the 6th round. I think it was by the Washington Redskins at the time. But yeah, that's a really good one. That's a really good one. I have to write down because he played. He started. He was solidly productive. He had critical moments. He checks a lot of those boxes that you look for.
He gave 100% effort, and he knew they were never drawing up plays for him. But he's still out there going all out every play. That's what every team needs, a guy like that.
That's a good answer. Yeah, his dad, and people forget too. His dad was and his dad is a true Buckeye great, Tim Spencer.
Yeah, Tim Spencer. Yeah,
absolute stud. Who was also a running back coach for Ohio State in the early 2000s with Michael, or late 90s, early 2000s, with Michael Wiley and Derek Holmes and that whole group. I think even Maurice Claret. But I love talking old school Buckeyes and just trying to reminisce.
That's fun.
Yeah, it's good stuff, man. It's really good stuff. But now we're in 2022, dude. The preseason magazines are coming out. Ohio just made it legal to gamble, which I don't know. Did you see that?
I saw that. It's going to be January 2023, January 1st.
Yep. Are you a big gambler? You gamble on any game? I don't. What's the rules in Michigan? I don't even know.
No, I mean, Michigan, we pretty much have free reign. Like, we can bet on everything, like player props. Some states you can bet on, like the college player props. We can't do that in Michigan, but I think we're getting there, though.
Yeah.
But other than that, though, pretty much free reign. Yeah, I gamble. I'm not going to say I gamble a lot, but, I'm really trying to learn it. I'm really trying to master it.
Can we expect any gambling pieces on the Buckeyes Around the Block network?
Yeah, I can put something together. Yeah, definitely.
Okay. I'm a little bit of a gambler. I mean, obviously, I'm not very good, as you can see from my small apartment behind me. But so I'm pretty excited. I put through some daily fantasy for the USFL and all of that. But there's not really a whole lot of odds out yet. I know that the Notre Dame odds have been fluctuating from 13 to 14 points. Obviously, it's not going to be legal in Ohio by the time that game kicks off. But it is legal where you're at. Does that game raise any eyebrows? Do you lean one way or another on 13? And that's another thing too. There's a big difference between 13 points and 14 points too.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah, a huge difference.
Like you would think a point doesn't mean that much until you start betting, and then you will realize that 1 point means a lot.
Well, especially if that 1 point makes it 2 scores.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know what I mean? Yeah. I believe in most books it's at 14 points. So let's just use 14 points. What do you have a lean? Is that something you stay away from? Is there is you raise an eyebrow?
Right now, I'm gonna still look into it some more. But as of now, I'm really leaning towards Ohio State with taking us with the spread. Like, I trust us to cover 2 scores against Notre Dame. Like, not knocking Notre Dame. I just feel like our offense is just going to be so explosive. I feel like we're just going to come out, score 35, 40 points opening day. But that's just how I feel. Stroud mastering the scheme some more. Like, he's just he's basically a vet at this point, just in that offense.
Yeah.
He's out there. And I know we lost, Olave and Wilson, but Marvin Harrison Jr. and Emeka Egbuka. Sorry about pronouncing your name wrong, but
no, that's a hard name.
Studs. Yeah, for real. But both studs. Then we got Jackson Smith and Jigba. So, I don't feel like we're really gonna have a drop off at receiver. And one thing
Julian Fleming too, man. Everybody that comes on the podcast forgets about Julian Fleming. I don't know why everybody just.
It's just the injuries, really.
I
think he was hurt during the spring game too. I don't think he
got
hurt during the spring game.
He was. I'm a little bit of a Julian Fleming homer, I suppose. I didn't know that until I started talking to people on this podcast. And every person comes on here, and every person has agreed. And I thought I honestly had a hot take because at the beginning of the year, or the spring, I said this wide receiver group is going to be better than the wide receiver group last year. And every person I've had on the show has gone, yeah, I can see that. That makes sense.
Yeah, like the thing, I like about Marvin Harrison Jr., I feel like he brings something different we haven't had in the receiving room like the last couple of years, like the size. Like 6'3", like 205, 210.
Yeah,
really think the last like kind of big guy we had was Mike Thomas. Mike Thomas, I think, was
Yeah,
around that size. Everybody else been around like 6 foot, 190, stuff like that. Still studs, but
it
it's
brings
nice
an
to have a
extra.
new look in there at the receiver room. Just have a new look. That's what I'm eager to see. Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, yeah, and goddamn, you sure you didn't listen to the podcast last week? You pretty much. So exactly what Jay was talking about, but yeah, the beautiful part, I feel like I'm repeating myself, but like you said, okay, if you have two A+ receivers, but they're both the same kind of receiver, it's a little less threatening than having an A receiver, two A's and a B receiver, or an A and a B receiver, but the B receiver is the possession guy and the A receiver is the speed guy. It's a little bit more threatening if you have things that a thunder and lightning, so to speak. But I'm with you, dude. And, you did say no disrespect to Notre Dame, but we got to clear this up. You're talking about Ohio State winning by more than 2 touchdowns. That is disrespect to Notre Dame,
Yes, it is,
right?
man. Yeah, I mean, it is. I can see us winning by like 17. I can see us winning something like 41-24.
That
I can
makes
see a
sense.
score like that, something like that, like a good game. Then we start pulling away midway through the third, something like that.
Okay, that makes sense because again, this is something we talked about last week or a couple weeks ago with Jay on the show, and he said not the same thing, but he also said, I don't think Ohio State is going to blow them out, but I think Ohio State will beat that spread. And I'm thinking, dude, that's two. You're saying they're going to win by more than 2 touchdowns. That's a blowout. That is the definition of a blowout. Prime time, top 25 matchup. That's the definition of if Ohio State, because Ohio State wins by, you're talking about Ohio State winning by 3 touchdowns, right? Because with this offense, you're not talking about 2 touchdowns and a field goal. You're talking about 3 touchdowns, pretty much, right? Am I reading?
Basically, yeah.
With this offense, right? Because it's not like the Tressel years. You're pretty much assuming that they're going to win by 3 scores. That's a goddamn blowout. If they're winning by 21 points. But I'm with you. I lean towards Ohio State. You said that you're going to do some more research. I'm probably in the same boat where it's less about research and it's more about me not having the balls, to be quite honest with you.
Yeah. Hey, sometimes that'll get you, but sometimes you just got to follow that first gut instinct when it comes to betting. That's something I learned, man. Just follow that first gut instinct, even if it looks crazy.
Yeah, that's excellent gambling advice too, by the way. Anybody who's listening, take that gambling advice. Just do whatever your gut tells you. Put it all on. Empty that bank
Hey,
account.
don't put it all on the line now.
And then when you lose, you can reach Bull at Bull Walker 1.
Hey, no, bet responsibly now, man. But yeah, definitely trust that gut though.
That's funny, man. Well, let's talk about. I know I told you I'd make it short. We're already over the 20-minute mark, but I'm having a good time talking to you, dude. This is exciting.
It's cool, man. Yeah.
This is exciting. We again, just for everybody listening, we literally have never spoken before 7 o'clock today.
Yeah,
so this is an adventure for everybody. But let's talk about the NIL, bro. So today it came out that Ryan Day said it's going to take $13 million of NIL money to keep this roster intact for next year. And they're talking about all these NIL initiatives and yada, yada, yada. Obviously, everybody saw what Texas A&M did in their recruiting class. Everybody's heard about the Texas rumors and their coalition or group or whatever the hell you want to call it. It's the reality of the situation. Is the NIL is something we have to deal with. What I guess there's so many questions. I don't know where to start. Do you know where to start? Or like I guess my first question is, how do you even feel about NIL? Because there's a lot of people that are like, and there's a lot of people that wanted this to happen. They said NIL is great. These players should be getting paid. And now they're seeing guys be transferred to to schools across the country just because they're getting paid, Jordan Addison. And then they're seeing guys recruits commit to schools that they've never been to campus. Then you're seeing guys that reclassify Quinn Ewers, you know what I mean, just to make a quick buck and then transfer out. So it's kind of, now you're seeing those guys that were wanting these players to get paid going, okay, we created a monster. This is Pandora's box. We messed up. How do you feel? Where are you at on it?
I mean, I feel like I'm happy that they can get, money. I feel like it's long overdue that they can get some type of financial gain, off their likeness, all the work they put in. I feel like they're basically pros. Like, we go into a big school like Alabama, Ohio State, Michigan, LSU, you're going to be a pro. And that's how I feel like they're going to train you. So I feel like they should be, rewarded for their work. As far as, like, the people complaining, I'm not sure. I haven't really had any complaints as of now. Like I feel like this was should have been expected, with them just now letting this happen. Like, of course, it was going to be a whole bunch of people just flooding the market,
Yep.
money and everything. But I think you got to give it a couple years to really resonate and sit before you really try to attack it and decide if it's a good thing or not. Because I mean, we still, with it, we still had like, Alabama versus Georgia. It wasn't hasn't. I don't feel like too much is going to change with it personally, as far as who the top teams are, the dominant powers. Like,
Well, I think that's kind of the crux of the. It's funny because I'm with you. So there's just so much to unpack. I don't even know where to start. But everybody talks about these players getting paid. Well, first of all, it's not like they weren't getting anything, right? I mean, I'm sure you've seen the Woody Hayes Athletic Center.
yeah, true.
I know at Oregon they even get free haircuts. You get free clothes, you get free food, you get a free edge. I mean, I'm up to debt in my eyeballs. Now I know, the argument to that is these coaches are getting paid $10 million, yada, yada, yada. I can be convinced to pay these guys, right? And I'm cool with that. That's the reality of the situation. I've made peace with it. But now you got kind of this issue where the guys that are getting paid are kind of guys that were already going to get paid. I mean, you see CJ Stroud and Jackson Smith and Jigba signing autographs down at the fairgrounds charging 50, 60, 70 bucks. Well, those are the guys that were going to get paid. You know what I mean? Those are the star players that are even like if you look at a guy like JT Barrett. JT Barrett still hangs around in Columbus and signs autographs for 50 bucks. He makes a very healthy living based purely off the fact that he's JT Barrett. You look at a guy like Tyvis Powell, who went undrafted, had a cup of coffee in the CFL and the NFL. He's got a radio show now, right? I mean, he does a very good job. I'm not bashing Tyvis Powell, but if he didn't play football for Ohio State, things might not be so shiny for Tyvis. You know what I mean? Like, so and I don't necessarily. It's not like It's not like Noah Ruggles is becoming a millionaire from it. You know what I mean? It's not like the guys at Akron. I guess that's the issue that I have is you got guys like Xavier Valladay, the running back from Wyoming. Well, he ain't making no money at Wyoming. No one gives a shit about him at Wyoming. That the NIL thing didn't help him at all. So instead of staying at Wyoming, he transferred to Arizona State this past year, where he's probably still not making the money that TreVeyon Henderson is. Ain't no one giving him a free car, I'm sure. But to try to plus on this NIL situation, I don't know if that's necessarily. I think that it created. I don't think anybody anticipated the amount of money that was going to be in it. So Quinn Ewers is another example. He made $3 million last year. He never took a snap of football. He made $3 million. He was making more than his position coach. It's like I think that a lot of people assume that these players would be getting $100,000 here and there, and free McDonald's and enough to feed their families, and that these guys are rich now. These guys, there are some dudes that are rich, and it's just like.
Well, I also think it's like, my bad. You keep going out with it.
No, please, please.
I just feel like I feel like the following these guys get over the years is what leads to these big amounts of money. Like, you got the Elite 11, you got following guys with cameras. Some of these guys recording documentaries. They got the recruiting rankings, all these camps and everything. Like, you got some of these guys, they've been stars since they were like 14 years old. Like, Quinn Ewers, he's been a star in Texas since middle school, basically. Like, he's been a star. He's a legend down there just from off his high school work. So I feel like that plays into the guys getting, a guy like him making $3 million, or a guy like CJ Stroud. Like, we following these guys so much. Just as a fan follow, you can, know a guy's every move almost, with the coverage they get. So they treat them like stars so young. I feel like that plays into the amounts of money that they're getting right now.
Yeah, I'm okay with that. And like I said, I'm kind of at peace with the fact that these guys are getting paid. It's just like, but now it's getting to the point where they're making so much money that they're making life decisions based off of getting paid. No one really, no one really gives a shit about what school they go to. I feel like even like the coaches and stuff, you're gonna start to see that lost connection. I mean, you can read books on how Woody Hayes would call former players, and that like Rod Gerald. I believe that Rod Gerald. I might be wrong, but he was a quarterback for Ohio State, and he didn't get his degree. And Woody would call him like once a year, and be like, "Hey, did you go back get the degree? I'd really like if you went back to get your degree. You got the scholarship. Go back." Coaches don't give a shit now. They don't.
That's true.
And how can you? How can you? You know, because that's not your job. Now you're recruiting full time. You don't give a shit. No one gives a shit about that degree. It's all about how much money can you get that guy in his hands as quickly as possible. And I don't have. It's not that I have an issue with it. I want to be very clear. I don't have. Everybody should get theirs, right? You cash in while you're alive. But Quinn Ewers going to Ohio. First of all, Quinn Ewers reclassifying and going to Ohio State was a huge mistake. It was a huge mistake for everybody. He clearly didn't want to go to Ohio State. He felt rushed because he wanted the NIL money. He was clearly homesick. There was rumors of him going back to his hometown on the weekends when Ohio State had away games because he wasn't going to travel. He used up a year of his eligibility. It was a bad decision for everybody, and the whole reason for it was money. Jordan Addison transferred from Pittsburgh to USC. That's his right. He gets to. But let's be real. He's transferring because of the money. And that's a dude who probably would have went down as one of the greatest wide receivers in Pittsburgh history, right next to Larry Fitzgerald. And that'll never happen now because that dude left, right? And he left. And it's just kind of sad. It's just, but I don't know. I just feel like there should be some kind of, I don't want to say salary cap, but like maybe that money gets put on hold and you get it to touch it when you graduate. And maybe that won't make you make such rash decisions. I don't know what the answer is. But that's not another tough part too, is that like once you start giving this money out, you can't really take it away. And
that's
I think
true.
that, right? I mean, how do you do that? Where do you begin? You can't all of a sudden be like, nah, everything's gotta go back to the way it was. That doesn't really, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I agree with you. I feel what you're saying.
Yeah, that's like.
So I think one of the things I like about it, like a guy like. I even like not to keep talking about Quinn Ewers, but even a guy like
it's hard not to because the guy made $2 million.
Yeah, but it's like let's just say like he's one of those highly touted recruits that just never becomes anything, flames out. Because like that happens a lot.
It might happen.
But like at least he got to make money off his name while it was worth something. Sometimes I look at it like that because these guys, they have still been putting in the work. So but I do agree, like just. I don't know if I agree with like bidding wars, stuff like that. But I mean, that's just the beast they've created, so we're just gonna have to see how it all plays out. But maybe they can figure out something with the boosters. Maybe I don't know. Like I don't think I should just be straight bidding on players. But I don't want to also say that they shouldn't, get their money. It's just I feel like it's a healthier way to do it, as far as like stuff like that, bidding on players and stuff like that.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, too, these are not grown men. Quinn Ewers is still a kid, right? And that a kid, a guy like Ndamukong Suh or Jadeveon Clowney, that's a grown ass man. That's a grown ass man with a family. You know what I mean? He's making decisions based off of that. If he wants to make decisions purely based off of money, that's up to him. But but a 17-year-old making decisions I don't know if it's a smart move. I get what you're saying about like the 5-star flaming out, but at the same time. That I think that's another reason why. So let's use Quinn Ewers. Quinn Ewers made $3 million. Let's say he makes another $3 million this year. Okay. So he's got $6 million in the bank. That's probably enough to where even if he sucks, he's as long as he plays his cards right, he shouldn't be broke, right? I don't know if it's generational wealth, but it's enough wealth to be. It's more money than I'll make in my lifetime, right?
I mean, hopefully not. Hopefully we'll both become millionaires. Hopefully we both will.
But at the same time, who's to say if he would have made his decision? Because you're talking about if he would have, let's say, went to Ohio State, and Ohio State does what do they call? I can't remember what they're called. Those professional Wednesdays or after school Wednesdays, where those guys have internships and this and that. I mean, Evan Spencer's a guy that took advantage of that, and now he's like one of the dudes at Leonard Monroe and yada yada yada, does this and that. He's real estate agent and all that. Josh Perry took advantage of that. Now he's on the Big Ten network. I just think if you're more level-headed, like, okay, hey, I want to be there because I like the environment. I like the weather. I like the chicks or whatever it is. I just think money makes that real cloudy, dude. I don't know, but I don't know what the answer is. I know it's odd. It's just odd,
Yeah, it is odd, but I feel like they're gonna try to figure something out. I mean, some of these coaches, they've already been paying players anyway.
Oh, so, for sure.
As far as we said, like what I was just saying about the bidding war, coaches have already probably been having bidding wars the last 50 years, but now it's just public knowledge.
Well, I think that's one of the reasons why Nick Saban snapped the other day about Jimbo Fisher. Are you mad because now everybody's paying their players.
Yeah,
Because
it's like you've been, man,
Alabama's
come
been doing
on
it for
now.
years. Everybody's heard stories about Alabama, the McDonald, the brown paper bags and shit like that. You can't tell me what 5-star recruit in their right mind is going to go hang out in Tuscaloosa voluntarily, bro. Come on,
And then come on, man, you get so many guys that come back for their senior year too. That's something
yeah,
else I've noticed. Like, come
yeah,
on,
dude.
man, you're not getting all these guys are top 10 picks already. How you getting them to keep coming back for their
Exactly,
senior year, man?
Yeah, dude. So I mean, there's pros and cons to it. I guess that leads to the next thing. We're talking about transfers. Talk about Quinn Ewers and Jordan Addison. Do you think? I mean, because back in the day, it sounds like we're roughly the same age. I remember if you transferred, you had to sit out a year, right? Do you remember those days?
Yeah, I remember that year.
Yeah, now you're transferring you're transferring freebie, and you get to play the next year. You got guys that have transferred 3 times. JT Daniels transferred from USC to Georgia to West Virginia. Tate Martell transferred from Ohio State to Miami to UNLV. How do you feel like that's? I also think that it's so. I sound like such an old crotchety like dude saying, "No, I don't like it," but it's like. It's one of those things where I feel like it did need to be changed, but now it's gone to such an extreme that it's made shit weird. Like the transfer. I mean, dude, Ohio State had like 20 guys transfer out this point.
Yeah, that's true.
It's odd. It just feels odd, right? Like, how do you feel about that? Is it just kind of
also feel like that plays into what you were saying about coaches and the relationship with the players. I think the transfer portal was, something else that plays into that. You got NIL, you got transfer portal, like it's a lot of things, blocking that genuine relationship between coach and player.
Yeah.
But like far as the transfer portal, I mean, I do like the fact that they don't have to sit out a year. I always hated that, but I don't know. It just seemed like you don't want to say people are like abusing it. Like are some guys just
that's exactly what they're doing.
Are some just mad that they can't be the guys out, so they keep transferring from school to school. Because a lot of times you see those guys transfer like to 2 or 3 schools, it never works out. Like not to knock like Tate Martell, but like Tate Martell, it didn't get better, at any school.
Yeah.
And like we'll see what happened with JT Daniels, but like he couldn't beat out Stetson Bennett at Georgia. No. So, and he couldn't be he lost to Slovis at USC, and Slovis had to transfer out of there because, where did he go? Pittsburgh. So he's got to transfer to Pittsburgh. So it's like, maybe JT Daniels is another guy who maybe he just isn't the answer. I don't know. So I don't know. I just don't want to see I think I saw something like 2,000 players in the transfer portal or something like that. Like that's crazy to me. Like that many guys.
Yeah, and I think it's like the year thing. When back in the day when it was occurring, I was like, I felt it was kind of silly, but I kind of get it now because now if you transfer, you need to be damn sure that you're making the right choices. That's why, I mean, I know that, 2 guys that kind of pop up in my mind are, Nicky Goings, Sammy Maldonado, and another guy is Mike Foray, who transferred to Northern Iowa. You can look at those situations and be like, okay, that made sense. Like that guy, Nick Goings transferred closer to home when he went to Pitt. Mike Foray transferred. Not only did he transfer closer to home, but he transferred down to the FBS level, or the FCS level, so he could play. Sam Maldonado went to Maryland, which was closer to home for him. You know what I mean? Like it was like those guys took time. Like it was almost like they were like, okay, I got to sit out a year. I got to make sure that I like this place. Yeah, now it's like too. It don't matter. You know what I mean? Like you can follow your head coach and go where JT Daniels probably get transferred or Keaton Slovis transferred to Pitt probably because of Jordan Addison.
You never know. That might have been one of the coach's main pitches to him, man. And Jordan Addison's gone.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah. To your former school too, where you were just at.
Yeah, so it's like, what are you gonna do?
Like I liked it because I feel like there's been times where players had genuine gripes with the university or transfer. It made sense, like the guys you just brought up. But now it's just like, are people just transferring just because they can or just to do it? Like, I don't know. And I want the players to have freedom, but maybe they should work on a deadline or something, something like that.
Yeah, I don't think that's a bad idea. I also think that the big elephant in the room too is no. It's not. It doesn't bother me. It never bothered me back in the day. Not one bit that college players didn't get paid. Not one bit. Because first of all, like I said, it's one of those situations where I believe that the rich get richer. I played football at a shitty little school called Valparaiso, right? No one was fucking paying me. No one's paying the dudes at Akron. No one's paying the dudes at Ohio. The only dudes that are getting paid are the guys that are already probably going to go to the NFL or are going to get rich because they played. You know what I mean? So it never bothered me that those guys didn't get paid anyways because they still got free food. I still saw them at the club getting chicks. You know what I mean? Like they got free clothes, better clothes than I ever had, and it was all free. You know what I mean? So it never bothered me, right? Just like, and the transfer thing never really bothered me. I thought it was odd, but the problem is, it's hard to tell that player no when your head coach is making $10-15 million a year. You know what I mean? Back when Earl Bruce was coaching, he made like 40 grand. When Earl Bruce made $40,000 a year as the head, or I think it was like, I don't know, someone double check that. It was like less than like 100 grand a year coaching Ohio State football. You know what I mean? And I get that that's we're talking about the 80s, right? Like that's a little insane too. Coaches should get paid more than that, but we kind of that's I think that's what made everything so crazy is that you got coaches and the coaches up and leave all the time. That no one cares.
I always think about Bobby Petrino. That's one of the ones I always think about. When Bobby Petrino, not Bobby Petrino.
No, that's
Brian
right.
Kelly though. I'll think about Brian Kelly.
Oh, that's a good one too.
When he just left Cincinnati before the Sugar Bowl, that was like their biggest game in school history. That BCS Bowl against Florida, just left to Notre Dame. You know, stuff like that. You know, there's always going to be instances like that. That's why it's like both sides, you know.
I know.
That's the hard forever. Yeah.
That's the hard part is that these coaches aren't accountable and they're making millions and millions of dollars off the backs of these 18-year-olds. And then the 18-year-olds compared to what the head coach, and they're still getting a lot. I want to be very clear. As a person who is riddled in student debt, I want to be very clear that I understand both sides and that the players, it's a pretty sweet deal to get a college degree and not have to pay anything. It's a pretty sweet deal. But, you know, the coach is making $10 million. So I don't know if something needs to be done. Maybe that's the answer is maybe like, okay, hey, coaches can't be, I don't know. You can't leave. Brian Kelly legit is a great example because he did leave right before the biggest game. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like that's just straight up shitty. And then he goes.
That makes you feel like you don't even care about the players.
I don't think he does. I mean, he moved.
That's what make you feel like that. Like if I'm on that team, like man, he's gonna leave right before the game, and then I think like watch interviews from the player, they were saying like he sent them like a text or something, or his speech was short and sweet, like he just said he was leaving and just walked out. Like
and that's I think that's the real problem. It's like how do you tell this kid that you can't make no money and you can't take advantage you can't transfer even though your coach is dancing and grinding on some 18-year-old in Louisiana with a fake accent. You know what I mean? It's hard to have that conversation. Yeah. But it's weird. It's weird, man. What do you what would you do with college football today? Like what is there any changes that like something that grinds your gears? And it doesn't have to be the stuff we talked about as far as NIL or this or that, but like it could be the playoffs or whatever. Is there something about college football that's like, man, I wish I could change that?
Man, it's not necessarily like a thing you can actually change, but I just wish we could like, you know, I watch a lot of old school football game, college football games. And back back when ESPN Classic was around, I used to always watch like classic college football games, you know. And one thing I just noticed like about the late 80s or like the 90s and stuff, the top teams, they played each other. Like, you know, they weren't afraid to play each other. Like, it would be number one versus number two, or, you know, two top five teams meeting up, not at a neutral site either. Like, they travel into that team stadium, and then the next year they travel into theirs. Like, you know, I wish we could get that again. Just, you know, teams, everybody just want to play it safe now, make the playoff, you know.
In the neutral site, dude. You nailed it.
Yeah, that's another thing. Shit. Like, nobody can ever agree to play each other because they want to have a neutral site game. And then it's like Ohio State, we play Bama, neutral site, Texas. That's not a neutral site.
Yeah.
Like, you know, just come to Ohio State, we go to Alabama or anybody. Like, that's how I feel like. I feel like I wish I could change that about college football so we can really see the great matchups. Because sometimes you think a team great, and it's because their schedule was trash. And then they finally play a talented team and get killed.
You know, someone told me, I think Florida hasn't had an away game outside of the state of Florida, like a true away game that wasn't a neutral site since like 2010 or some shit like that. It's like, it's crazy. I'm with you, dude. I think a lot of that is because when it comes to the playoffs, everybody's trying to like disguise their schedule. Back in the day, you know, when it was the Catholics versus convicts and shit, you were locked in, right? Back
Yeah.
the Ohio State, if they it didn't matter if they went undefeated, or it didn't matter if they're number 2 team in the country, number 1 team in the country. If you won the Big Ten, you were going to the Rose Bowl. So you could schedule Notre Dame, Alabama, Texas A&M. As long as you win the Big Ten, you're going to the Rose Bowl. So I think so when they made the playoffs and the BCS and all that stuff, people started to try to play like chicken with their schedule. Like, well, if I schedule, Charleston Southern before my big rival in Auburn, and then that gives them a bye week, and then I'll schedule Central Michigan and Troy, then we should be 4-0. You know what I mean? It's like I feel like that's part of the problem there. So I'm with you. I see that change too.
I was watching the Miami game. I was watching like the 90s Miami game. They were playing Nebraska like week 10. Week 10 of the season. And Nebraska like number 2. I'm like, man, that's just real. That's just great for the fans. And that's just real. I want to see real football matchups.
And it wouldn't matter, and it didn't matter because they, that game literally did not matter. Now the game matters so much.
That's the thing, though. Yeah, it does.
Because I think that I would almost be willing to get rid of the playoffs and just go back to that formula. It wasn't ideal, right? Because you want to see the number 1 versus number 2, but I would rather see Ohio State play Notre Dame, Texas, USC, all in the same season. You know what I mean?
Something like that.
Yeah. And then win the Rose Bowl, and then just announce a champion. Because even if you look at like this past year, the playoffs. Okay, the playoffs is a great idea, ideally, but even this past year, you can't tell me Georgia was better than Alabama. Alabama had John Mechie hurt and Jamison Williams hurt, and they just beat them the week before. They just beat them in the championship game.
Seriously.
So even the playoffs didn't really do anything because you just gave that team a second chance who got their ass whooped, and now the other team.
Seriously,
you know what I mean? That might be another thing too. If we talk about paying these players, you talk about these players being more and more professional. I think that's an issue too. Is that back in the day they played. If you played 12 games, when Ohio State won the national championship and they went 13-0, that was huge. They were the first team to ever do it because they played that kickoff classic against Texas Tech, right? They had that one extra game. Playing 13 games, no one did. That's insane. Now, if you win the national championship, you play your 12 regular season games and your conference championship, the playoffs, you can play 15 games.
Yeah.
That's a lot. That's a lot for, a kid that you're saying is not a professional. Maybe that's something too, is you could shorten the season. Maybe that would make it justifiable to not pay. I don't know. But I think you're onto something. I would agree with you on the scheduling thing. I do think it's a little bit crazy.
Man. We could expand the playoffs too. Maybe that'll help with the scheduling.
I'm down for that.
How they do it at the FCS just to see what happens. But a 4-team playoff, I just don't feel like it's enough teams. It just doesn't work.
I agree.
You're not even getting the 5 major conferences.
It's less than. if you look at every other playoff position, whether it's NFL, NHL, NBA, FCS, whatever you want, there's a 20-25% of the overall field. There's 114 FBS teams, and you're going to allow 4. That's less than 10%. That's less than 5%. That's doesn't seem like a lot. So I'm with you there. Maybe shorten the seasons and then extend the playoffs. And I'm not going to lie. When Ohio State scheduled Notre Dame, there was a part of me where I was like, "Oh, are you guys sure?" Because I want Ohio State to go to the national championship. If they lose to Notre Dame, and they win
the conference game, now we got to go undefeated in conference.
Yeah.
That's the only way we're getting there.
Yeah, exactly. And even then, you're still crossing your fingers because there's going to be an SEC team with 3 losses. You know what I mean?
Seriously,
because that seems to be the only conference where they're allowed to lose. Oh, well, Alabama lost to Texas A&M, who's lost 4 games. That's okay. It's not Texas A&M. It's okay.
Yeah, but that's crazy. SEC, they trying to get 2 teams in for them every year. I'm not hating SEC, but they play some great football.
They're the best conference. I'm not.
They're the best conference, but I just feel like sometimes they just try too hard for them, though.
Yes,
even that year when it was Alabama versus LSU in the championship. That's one of the worst championships probably the 2000s, the last 20 years. Why are we watching this game?
Well, I think part of what made, you talk about ESPN classic games too, is Miami, those old school Miami teams, all them dudes were from Florida. Hell, half them dudes were from Miami. You know what I mean? So college football, to me, what big reason why college football is so great is that like it was kind of like a regional thing. Where like the Rose Bowl was like East versus West, right? And a lot of those people from USC were from California. I mean, back in the day, if an Ohio State player was from Michigan, like Vernon Golston, or like I think Craig Krenzel was from Michigan too, or like it was a big deal. Like,
like Charles Woodson was from Ohio.
Yeah, like it's like a big deal. Like, oh, that guy's a traitor. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
I mean, and I'm okay.
Normal.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's a lot of that social media and yada yada yada. But I think with that, the playoffs have changed too, where they're lumping everything together. Like, oh well, let's put Alabama and LSU. And it's like, well, no, that's not really what people want to see. What makes college football great is Alabama's got to play Oregon. It's a team that's never,
Yeah, let's get some different play styles against
exactly.
That's what
exactly.
Like, let's see them against some explosive offense, and let's see this explosive offense against a stout defense. See what happens.
Yeah,
like Alabama and Georgia, like we know what they're both going to do. We don't need to see that. Like we just saw it. Like
we just saw it. We literally just saw it. And it's like the SEC is the best conference. I'm not gonna lie, it is. Yeah. It's the best conference. I'm cool with that. Most talented conference. And a lot of that's because you can literally you don't have to know how to even read to get in there. But that's a conversation for another day. But the problem is, it's not it's not, do you believe that the SEC is the best conference? Is that, do you believe that the SEC is so much of a better conference, that the gap is so big that they warrant 50% of the playoff field? That's already too small for college football. That's like saying that instead of, 10 teams in the AFC, they get 15 teams, and the NFC only gets 5 or whatever. You know what I mean? It's like you would never do that, right? Because one division, true. Even if you believe that the NFC is stronger than the AFC, no one in their right mind would be like, well, they're that much better. They're that much better to warrant 50% of the field, or 75% of the field. That's what you're doing with the SEC. You believe that they're so good that not only are you limiting the Power 5 schools down to 4 teams, but you're limiting it down to 3. You're limiting it down to 3 conferences. That's the point that's the part that always bothered me. It's like, I'm not disagreeing because people always say, they're like, oh, well, you just think that the SEC sucks. No, the SEC is the best conference. It's been the best conference for the past decade. It's the best conference, typically from top to bottom, right? I can deal with that. Yeah, and there's been years where the Big Ten, I mean, I don't know. There's been years where the Big Ten's not been good. They have not played good football. I would probably even put them as the weakest Power 5 conference at points in the past decade. I can admit that, but that doesn't mean that the winner of the conference is, ass compared to the winner of the SEC. You know what I mean? That's the part that I hate.
Yeah, that's the part I hate about it.
Yeah.
So that's why I just feel like expansion, that'll be better. Because then if you want to put your 2 SEC teams in or 3 SEC teams, it'd be cool because we got a broader field. At least everybody has representation. With football is one game, you never know what can happen. They could just come with that right game plan for that team in that one game. That's why I feel like it's better, to have more teams, to see more matchups. I feel like it'd be better for everybody.
So let me ask you this, because you talked about expanding the playoffs. What's the ideal number for you?
For me, I'll probably go with something like, I know they were talking about 8. I'm cool with 8 going from 4 to 8, but like,
okay.
What I would really want, something like 16. Honestly, something like 16. I like something like that. 16 teams in the playoff. Shorten the season up, whatever they got to do. Maybe shorten the season to like 9 games, 10 games, something like that. But yeah, 16 games, I like that.
That's so funny because that's the ideal. Everybody, when I say 16, everybody calls me crazy. That's too many. But that's exactly what I do. I do 16. You got 12.
Even like Cincinnati last year. Like, I'm not saying Cincinnati could beat Alabama. Like, what if they had like a warm-up game against a physical team to get them, warmed up for something like Alabama.
Yeah.
And then maybe, they could give them a better fight or something. That's like, a shock. You play in the American Athletic Conference, you just go play Bama. A shock. Is like, it's crazy. If the guys are bigger, faster, stronger, stuff like that, I feel like it'd be better.
I'm with you, dude. I'm all about that. Like I told someone, it might have been Donovan James on another podcast, but I said, dude, let's shorten the season to like 9 regular season games. Just do nothing but play your conference championship, and let's rock and roll into the 16-team playoff. There's 12 conferences. Every conference champion, even the shitty ones, even the Sun Belt champion, gets to the playoffs, you concede them, and then you get four at larges. The thing that I have is because everybody's like, let's just expand the playoffs. My fear is that even if they expand the playoffs to 8, you're just gonna have you're still gonna have the same issues where like instead of 2 SEC teams, you're gonna have like 4.
3.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's like there needs.
I
think there has to be some kind of seeding rules, right? So like if you had 16, you take each conference champion and then you take 4 at larges. But there has to be rules for the at larges too. They had to be in either A in the conference championship or B second in the conference, and you can only have 2 at the most, 2 from each conference, right? So at the Big Ten, in my situation, my ideal situation, Ohio State still wouldn't have made those playoffs because it would have been Michigan and Iowa, right? But to me, I think that unless Ohio State did something where they got rid of divisions like the Big 12, which I'm cool with that too. I think that probably be more ideal. But something like that. And that way you still got the games relatively the same, the number, all that stuff. Because we do, you have to work out. Everybody's talking about expanding the playoffs, but they want to keep the season the same. And I'm like, dude, that sucks for those players, bro.
Yeah, you can't do that. That's too many games.
Yeah, especially when you're talking, they're getting, but now they're getting paid. So it's like now you're going to, now they're getting paid so much too that they're going to start to be, it's going to be like the NFL where it's like, now we got so many games. It's like, dude, because I think the NFL's got too many games too. I think that's too hard on those guys, man. Especially like when you talk about running backs and stuff. Because I like watching old school football, guys run the ball and shit. And, I mean, if the NFL season was shorter, maybe a guy like Saquon Barkley might have a better career. You know what I mean? Yeah. I like to see those guys at full health, but I don't know, man. Again, I'm getting in the weeds on that one.
Man, they added another game too, and for them too now. So
that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
games, man.
It's a lot.
It used to be 14 games. That would have been ideal to keep it at 14 games.
I mean, I think I'm cool at 16 because they are. I mean, you're talking about guys that are making like literally like what's the Deshaun? Deshaun
30, 40 million a year, 50 million a year.
That's generational wealth. Like Deshaun Watson, his grandkids never have to work. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. So it's like, all right, well, screw it. Like, get out there. I don't give a shit about you anymore. At that point, you're making so much money. I kind of fucking hate you anyways. So, you know what I mean?
Hey, for real.
But all right, man, we hit the 55-minute mark, so I'll let you go. Before we get out of here, can you tell everybody where they can follow you, what you're up to, and anything exciting you want to add?
Man, you can follow me on Twitter at BullWalker1 and follow the Around the Block page at Around the Block Buckeyes at ATB Network. We have some great writers on the team at Around the Block, up at the sports site. A lot of great podcasts. A lot of great personalities. So if you're interested in writing, come join the team. As far as me, I'm working on an article about undrafted free agents. Something I'm working on right now. But other than that, though, I'm just chilling for now. Just for now.
But your DMs are open.
Yeah,
right?
DMs open. Anybody trying to join the team, for Around the Block or around the Block Buckeyes. Anybody trying to join the Buckeyes part of the team, reach out to me.
Is there anything specifically you're looking for? I mean, is this something where, are you looking for writing experience, or if I'm just a dude who's trying to dip my toe in, can I just be like, hey man, I've never written before, but can I start? Like, what do you?
You don't necessarily, have to have writing experience as long as you know how to write. Though, just come in,
just cross your T's, dot your I's.
We're not looking for guys with degrees. You don't have to have a degree or anything like that, but if you truly have a passion for sports writing, come join the team.
You just have to know where a comma goes.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming on. This was Ohio State of Mind. You can follow me on Twitter at Josh Keatley16. You can follow my writing at Buckeyes Wire, also at the Browns Wire. I've been a little slow lately because my day job has been sucking up most of my time. But Buckeyes Wire, I did write 6 articles this past week and listing some interesting statistical leaders from the Big Ten that's returning. So hopefully we can get back into those recruiting scouting reports. Hopefully we'll have Bull back on the show before the season starts. I'd love to get you and Jay on. Let's maybe do a real fantasy draft or something like that.
Oh yeah, I'm down for that.
Be bad. Yeah, like a Big Ten. That would be a good show. And if you guys have any suggestions, please let me know. Give Bull a follow. Give Around the Block a follow. Give me a follow. Subscribe. Give me a nice review. Please be nice. But we are out.